My sister mocked me as a lonely loser during her wedding, so her fiancé canceled all, tossed the ring, and the truth that followed stunned us all. My sister Barbara invited me to her wedding. Well, more like she pressured me to go, knowing I'd be the odd one out. "Of course you should come," she said in that fake sweet way she does. But then she added, "You'll have to sit at the back table though, you know, with the singles. You wouldn't really belong anywhere else since everyone comes with their partners." I didn't argue. I just nodded and let it go. That's the way Barbara and I have always been. She always tried to outshine me, and I've learned it's easier to just play along. But to be honest, I was already bracing myself for the usual passive-aggressive comments and comparisons she liked to throw my way whenever she got the chance. This time, though, I figured I'd just grin and bear it. After all, it was her big day. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, right, a lot could go wrong. What Barbara didn't know, what no one knew, was that her fiancé, Oliver, wasn't exactly a stranger to me. We had a history, and not just the casual kind. We were each other's firsts. We'd been teenagers, inseparable for about 2 years, until his family moved across the country. We'd lost touch after that, but it had been intense, one of those relationships that never quite leaves you, even when life moves on. Years after we broke up, he showed up out of nowhere. Barbara had started seeing him without any idea of who he was to me. I remember the day she brought him home to introduce him to the family. I walked into the living room, saw him standing there, and my heart just stopped. He saw me, too. His face didn't say much, but I saw it in his eyes. He remembered everything. We locked eyes for a moment, but neither of us said a word. We both just smiled politely and pretended not to know each other. Barbara, of course, was too caught up in her fantasy to notice. For the next few years, she bragged about how perfect Oliver was, how deeply in love they were, how he was going to give her the dream life she always wanted. And I just sat there, listened, and smiled, laughing inside because she had no idea. She never even noticed the way Oliver looked at me sometimes, the way he always found a reason to talk to me whenever I was around. But he was respectful. We never crossed any boundaries. Still, I could sense that some part of him still remembered how things used to be. Anyway, fast forward to the wedding day. I showed up, dressed decently but not too flashy. I didn't want to draw attention to myself. The reception was in this huge ballroom with fancy decorations. Chandeliers, the works, the kind of place Barbara would have drooled over since she was a kid. When I got to the reception hall, sure enough, they seated me at the table farthest from the main stage, the extras table, as I called it in my head. I didn't mind too much. I wasn't there to make a scene. I was just there to do my duty as a good sister, clap at the speeches, maybe have a drink or two, and leave without causing any trouble. Everything was going fine until Barbara decided she needed one last power move. It happened right after the first dance. She stood up, microphone in hand, and began making her rounds with a little speech. She thanked the guests, gushed about Oliver, and basked in the spotlight like a queen. Then, as she scanned the room, her eyes landed on me. Her smile twisted into something meaner, and I knew what was coming before she even opened her mouth. And finally, Barbara said, her voice echoing through the hall, "I want to give a shout out to my sister, Abigail. You all see her, right? She's over there at the singles table. The poor thing came alone. Maybe one day she'll find a husband too, so she won't have to sit there like a lonely loser." The whole room fell silent. The music playing in the background was the only sound. I felt as if someone had slapped me in the face. All the eyes on me made my skin crawl, and I wanted to disappear. But I didn't move. I didn't give her the satisfaction of reacting. The tension hung in the air until Oliver's voice cut through it like a knife. "Barbara," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "shut up." It was as if the world froze. Everyone turned to him, eyes wide. Even Barbara looked stunned. She started to stammer something, but Oliver wasn't having it. He stepped forward and glared at her. "You've humiliated her enough. You've humiliated yourself," he said. "I'm done. This is not the person I want to marry." And with that, he took off his wedding ring, walked to the nearest window, and threw it out. The crowd collectively gasped. Barbara ran after him, but he didn't stop. He walked straight out of the lobby and disappeared into the night. Barbara screamed after him, her wedding dress dragging on the floor as she tried to catch up. Meanwhile, I just sat there, stunned. The guests were whispering to each other, and some were still frozen. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't going to end quietly. Soon after, I slipped out, got in my car, and drove home. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I could already feel the storm brewing. I got home and braced myself for the fallout. I knew my parents weren't going to take this well. Barbara was their golden child, the one who always did everything right. Me? I was the afterthought, the good enough daughter who rarely made waves. I kicked off my shoes, changed into some comfortable clothes, and tried to relax. I knew the storm was coming, but I didn't expect it to last 3 hours. When my parents finally arrived with Barbara in the car, I could hear the screaming before they even made it to the front door. They burst into the house like a SWAT team. My dad slammed the door, and Barbara burst into tears on cue. "You've ruined everything," she screamed. "You always have to ruin everything." My mother folded her arms and glared at me like I was some kind of criminal. "Abigail, what have you done? How could you embarrass your sister on her wedding day?" I just blinked at her. What did I do? I didn't even say a word. "Oh, don't you dare play innocent," Barbara snapped, her face red and blotchy, her mascara smeared from crying. "Why did Oliver defend you like that, huh? Why did he look at you like that? What did you say to him?" I laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all hit me all at once. The room fell silent for a moment, and my parents stared at me as if I'd lost my mind. "Are you seriously blaming me for this?" I said, still laughing. "Barbara, you humiliated me in front of everyone. I didn't do anything. Oliver told you to shut up because you were being cruel. Maybe you should ask yourself why he couldn't handle it anymore." "You're lying," she snapped. "You were always jealous of me. You must have said something to him." "Jealous?" I repeated. "Of what? That you were always putting me down to make yourself feel better?" Barbara froze for a moment, as if she hadn't expected me to actually defend myself. But my parents weren't done. My mother stepped forward, her voice sharp. "We know you had something to do with this. You've been trying to undermine your sister for years." I rolled my eyes. "Oh, give me a break. I didn't say a word to Oliver. He made his decision on his own." Barbara started pacing in her wedding dress, tugging at her hair in frustration. "Then why did he defend you? Why?" I crossed my arms and leaned against the wall. "Maybe because, deep down, he knows who you really are. You treat people like crap, Barbara. You always have." He finally saw through it. Her jaw clenched. "You shut up. You don't know anything. He loved me. He's supposed to be with me." "Is he?" I shot back, because from where I'm standing, it doesn't look like he loves you enough to put up with your crap. That was it. Barbara completely lost it. She started screaming incoherent insults at me, and my parents quickly joined in, backing her up as usual. The three of them yelled at each other so much it sounded like a chaotic rap battle. Then my dad pointed to the door. "You've done enough damage for one night. Get out. We don't want you here." Barbara folded her arms and sneered. "Yeah, get out." I raised an eyebrow, then grinned. "You want me to leave? Fine. But before I go, let me say one last thing." I walked closer to her and locked eyes with her. "Do you want to know why Oliver defended me? Why he left you? Because unlike you, I don't act like a cheap, insecure brat. He respects me, and that's something you'll never have because you're too busy tearing everyone else down to make yourself feel better." The look on her face was priceless. She stood there gaping at me, as if her brain had shorted out. My parents were also stunned into silence. I guess they didn't expect me to finally stand up for myself. I turned and walked to my room, gathering a few essentials into a bag. Barbara was still frozen in shock as I passed her on my way to the door. I didn't even bother to say goodbye. I just grabbed my keys, left the house, and drove to a hotel for the night. When I finally got to the hotel and settled in, I noticed that my phone had dozens of missed calls and texts, all from Barbara. She was blowing up my phone with everything from screaming voicemails to frantic, rambling texts. I didn't even bother to listen to them. I knew it would just be more of the same, recriminations, insults, accusations. I turned my phone to silent and went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to something different. Among the unread messages, one caught my eye. It was from Oliver. "Hey," it read, "can we talk?" Oliver and I agreed to meet at my hotel that evening. I wasn't sure what to expect. I didn't want to read too much into it, but my mind kept racing. Why did he want to talk to me now, after all this? What could he possibly have to say that hadn't already been said through his actions last night? By the time he arrived, my nerves were shot. I heard the knock at the door around 8 p.m. and took a deep breath before opening it. There he stood, looking tired but calm. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," I replied, stepping aside to let him in. We sat down on the small couch in the room, and for a few moments neither of us spoke. There was this heavy, unspoken tension between us, like all the years and memories we'd buried were suddenly rising to the surface. Finally, he broke the silence. "Barbara's been calling me non-stop," he said, shaking his head. "She's been waiting for me at the apartment with my parents and sister. I guess she thought I'd come back after cooling off, but I couldn't. I needed to talk to you first." "Yeah, she's been calling me too," I said, showing him the long list of missed calls on my phone. "I haven't answered." He smiled slightly, then leaned back, rubbing his face. This whole thing's a mess, huh? I nodded. Yeah, it's a disaster. For the next few hours, we talked about everything. The past, the wedding, and what had happened between us all those years ago. He told me how he'd never really forgotten about me after his family moved away. How he'd always wondered what could have been if things had turned out differently. We were good together, he said quietly, looking at me with that same warmth I remembered from when we were teenagers. Yeah, I agreed, we really were. He told me about how things with Barbara had started out fine but had gradually turned into something else. I don't even know how it got this far, he admitted. At first, I thought maybe I was just settling into the idea of a stable life. Barbara, she was intense but seemed driven. I thought it was passion, but over time I started to see how manipulative she could be. I stayed though, probably out of pity more than anything. I didn't want to hurt her, and I thought I could make it work. I shook my head. You shouldn't stay with someone out of pity. That's not fair to either of you. I know that now, he said. But last night when she humiliated you like that, I couldn't take it anymore. That was the moment I realized I was done pretending. We kept talking, sharing old memories, laughing about silly things we'd done as kids. There was a spark between us, something I hadn't felt in years. It was like we picked up right where we left off. For a moment, I wondered if things were about to take a more intimate turn. His eyes lingered on mine, and I could feel the tension building. But we both hesitated. Maybe we should take things slow, he finally said, almost reading my thoughts. Yeah, I agreed. There's a lot to process right now. We talked until the early hours of the morning, 5 a.m. to be exact. Eventually, the exhaustion caught up with us, and we both fell into a comfortable silence. I could tell that Oliver felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He had finally made peace with the decision to leave Barbara. I think I'm going to pack up my things today, he said after a long pause. I'll tell her it's over and leave the apartment. I can't keep living a lie. Are you sure? I asked. Yeah, he nodded. I'm done. I should have done this a long time ago. With that, he stood up and stretched. I'll get going. Thanks for listening. I really needed this. Anytime, I said, walking him to the door. As he left, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and anticipation. This was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my own life again. The next chapter was just beginning. Later that morning, I managed to catch a couple of hours of sleep, but around noon, I was woken up by loud banging on my hotel room door. For a moment, I thought it might be Oliver coming back, but the aggressive, frantic knocking didn't match his style. Abigail, open the door! It was Barbara. I groaned, pulling myself out of bed. She didn't stop banging. I considered ignoring her, but I didn't want her waking up half the hotel. I opened the door slightly, just enough to glare at her. What do you want? I asked coldly. Barbara shoved the door open and barged in, still wearing a cocktail dress, her hair a mess, makeup smudged. Where is he? She hissed, looking around the room like Oliver might be hiding in the closet. I crossed my arms. He's not here. Don't lie to me. She snapped. You think I don't know what's going on? He didn't come home last night. He's not answering his phone. I know he's been with you. Calm down, Barbara, I said, trying to keep my composure. Oliver came here last night to talk. That's it. We talked and then he left. I don't know where he is now. Barbara's eyes narrowed. Talk? Really? That's all? You expect me to believe that? I don't care what you believe. Her face contorted with rage. You've always wanted to ruin my life, haven't you? You couldn't stand that I had someone who loved me, so you had to steal him away. You're a pathetic, jealous... I took a deep breath. Barbara, you brought this on yourself. He saw who you really are last night. You humiliated me in front of all those people. Oliver stood up for me because you crossed the line, not because I stole him. Before she could respond, her phone rang. She snatched it out of her bag and froze when she saw the caller ID. It's him, she whispered, her eyes wide. She answered immediately, putting it on speaker. Oliver, where the hell are you? His voice came through, calm but firm. Barbara, I'm at the apartment packing my things. I'm leaving. We're done. Barbara gasped. No, you can't do this. You can't just walk away like this. I'm your fiancé. Not anymore, he said. I'm sorry, but I can't do this. I've been lying to both of us for too long. We were never meant to be. Is it because of Abigail? She shrieked. Did you leave me for her? There was a pause on his end. This isn't about Abigail, he finally said. This is about us. Our relationship has been toxic for a long time. Last night was the final straw. Barbara screamed in frustration and hung up the call. throwing her phone across the room. I stood there quietly, watching her unravel. She looked at me with wild eyes, like she was ready to tear me apart. "You think you won, don't you?" she spat. "Barbara, this isn't a competition. You need to let him go." She shook her head violently. "No, this isn't over. You'll see." Without another word, she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I sat on the bed, my mind racing. I didn't know what Barbara was planning, but something told me she wasn't going to give up easily. An hour later, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a voice I didn't expect said, "Abigail, this is Officer Daniels. We've had a report of a disturbance at Oliver's apartment. We need to speak with you." My heart dropped. What kind of disturbance? "There's been an incident involving your sister." When I arrived at Oliver's apartment later that afternoon, the scene was chaotic. Barbara was crying hysterically, surrounded by her parents and his sister, while Oliver stood calmly off to the side with a few bags packed, his face set in stone. "You can't do this, Oliver. We're supposed to be together," Barbara sobbed. "I've already made my decision," he said. "I'm done, Barbara." His parents arrived soon after. I expected them to side with her, to beg him to reconsider. Instead, his dad walked over to him, placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Son, choose with your heart and mind. If you truly understand what you want and who makes you happy, then take that path and don't listen to anyone else. Life's too short to live a lie." His mother nodded in agreement. "We trust you, Oliver." Barbara's jaw dropped. "You're supporting this? He's abandoning me." Oliver's mom gave her a pointed look. "Maybe you should reflect on why he's leaving instead of blaming everyone else." Barbara wailed even louder as his family helped him load his bags into his car. Watching all this unfold, I felt a pang of jealousy. I wished I'd had parents like his, calm, supportive, and wise. Mine? Well, they were a nightmare, always putting Barbara on a pedestal while treating me like I was a constant disappointment. After Oliver finished packing, he walked over to me and pulled me aside. "Abigail," he said quietly, "let's get out of here. Let's leave all this behind. We can go to another state, start over together. No drama, no manipulation, no pretending. Just us, as adults this time, not two teenagers holding hands." My heart pounded in my chest. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. I've had enough of this. I want a real life with you." The words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't even hesitate. "Okay," I said. "Let's do it." We made a plan to meet in a few hours and drive out to Oregon, far enough from everything and everyone. I headed back home to pack, knowing full well what kind of reaction I was going to get. As I left Oliver's place, I noticed Barbara wasn't there anymore. It seemed strange at first, but I figured maybe she'd finally given up. I couldn't have been more wrong. She hadn't gone back to their apartment. She'd followed me. A few minutes after I drove off, Barbara must have jumped into a taxi, because when I arrived at my parents' house, there she was, pacing outside like a vulture. She probably figured I was heading home to pack and wanted to confront me before anyone else could. As soon as I got out of the car, she ran up to me screaming, "You think you can just run off with him? You're delusional," she shrieked. I brushed past her and headed inside. That's when the real storm began. My parents immediately pounced on me, with Barbara right behind them. "Are you happy now?" my mom demanded. "You've ruined your sister's life. Oliver left her because of you. You're a selfish little snake," Barbara added. "You think you're better than me? You'll never have what I have." I stared at them, emotionless. "What you have? You mean a guy who walked out on you because you couldn't stop tearing people down? You're disgusting," she screamed. "Get out of here. You're not part of this family anymore." "Gladly," I said calmly. I went to my room and packed my things quickly. I grabbed everything important, including personal documents and my savings account information. My dad barged in at one point, demanding to know what I was doing. "I'm leaving," I said flatly, "and I'm taking my share of the family money." "What? You can't do that. Watch me." I transferred the money to my own account, knowing it would send them into a frenzy. As I walked out the door for the last time, Barbara and my mom were screaming at the top of their lungs. I didn't even flinch. I got into my car, blasted some music to drown out the noise, and drove off without looking back. Oliver was waiting for me near a gas station off the highway. We both smiled as we pulled up next to each other. "Ready?" he asked. "More than ready," I said. We hit the road and didn't stop until we reached Oregon late that night. We checked into a small, cozy hotel and talked about our plans. Over the next few days, we found a temporary apartment and started piecing together our new life. Everything had changed so quickly, but in a strange way, it felt like it was meant to be. Meanwhile, his parents stayed in touch, fully supportive of his decision. They didn't care about the drama or what anyone thought. They just wanted him to be happy. I envied that. I knew I'd never get that kind of love and understanding from my own family, and honestly, I didn't want to anymore. I cut off all contact with my parents and Barbara. I blocked their numbers, changed my phone, and erased them from my life. It felt like shedding a heavy, suffocating weight. Oliver and I had a lot of healing to do, but we were ready for it. We weren't kids anymore, and we weren't going to let the past define us. This was our fresh start. No more lies, no more pain, just us building something real together. And that's how everything changed in my life, faster than I could have imagined. But maybe that's exactly what I needed.